Did you know that on average, it takes about 6 months to buy a house here in the UK? Yes, you heard me right. 6 whole months. But of course, that can vary widely depending on many factors, including the property market, the buyer's circumstances, and the efficiency of all the parties involved. That is how efficient your solicitor and mortgage broker are would also determine how fast or how long your house buying process would take. Still, it is important to remember that the time it takes to buy a house in the UK could be longer or shorter. So stick around to the end of the video and I will dive into what really impacts these timelines. So for those of you who are new here, hi, my name is Wande and my husband and I recently bought a newly built 4-bed detached house as experts working here in the UK on work visas. And ever since we bought our house, I have been making videos about the house buying process here in the UK as a foreigner. Just provide those looking to do the same with virtual moral support, if I can say that, and information on how to go about it. With that said, in this video, I would give you a detailed breakdown of the key stages of buying a house here in the UK and how long each might take based on our house buying process to give you an idea of how long it will take you to buy a house here in the UK. Now, before I go into the video proper, let's chat about some common misconceptions. So some people might think that buying a house here in the UK is as simple as signing a few papers and getting your key. Voila, you're done buying a house. But that is not the case at all. There's a lot of factors that can mess with your house buying timeline. For instance, getting a mortgage approval if you're buying a house with a mortgage can take time. Survey and legal checks can also take time. And then there's the back and forth between buyers and sellers, which can feel like a game of tug of war, if I say so myself. Plus, don't forget about the chain if you're a part of one, and that can really drag things. So it is crucial to manage your expectations and understand that patience is key when it comes to buying a house here in the UK. All right, with that said, let's get into the nitty-gritty details of the process involved in buying a house here in the UK and the timeline. The first key stage of buying a house here in the UK is saving for the house purchase price if you'll be buying it with cash, or saving for a deposit if you'll be buying the house with a mortgage. Now, you need to know that it doesn't matter whether you're buying a house with cash or with a mortgage, you would also need to save for the hidden costs of buying a house here in the UK, like the solicitor fees, amongst many others. I do have a detailed video on the hidden cost of buying a house in the UK. I will link the video to this video for those who will be interested in knowing more about the hidden cost of buying a house. Now, how long saving to buy a house might take depends on your financial capability and financial literacy. If you're buying a house with a mortgage here in the UK, you might need to put down a deposit of about 5 to 10% of the purchase price, which can actually take time. According to Kala.co.uk, the average time it takes to save for a house deposit here in the UK is actually 8 years for a terrace house and almost 10 years for a semi-detached house. However, BBC News reports that first-time buyers typically need to save for 8 years to afford a deposit. So as you can see, saving for a house deposit takes time. Now, the amount you would actually need to save for a house deposit depends on the value of the property. For instance, if the house you want to buy costs about £200,000, your deposit will likely be at least 5% of the purchase price, which is £10,000. So you would have to save £10,000. And if you're looking to put down 10%, you would have to save £20,000. For my husband and I, it took us about 2 years to save for a house deposit and the hidden cost of buying a house. If you want to know how we save for a house deposit because you want to save for a house deposit or you're just curious, I have a video on the channel detailing how we saved for our house deposit in 2 years. I will link the video to this video for those who are interested in watching it. Moving on, the second stage will be getting a mortgage in principle. Now, before you start house hunting, it's advisable that you secure a mortgage in principle. Now, for those who are not familiar with the house buying process here in the UK, you might be wondering, what is a mortgage in principle? Basically, the mortgage in principle is a statement from a lender indicating how much they are willing to lend you based on your income and credit rating. Now, you need to know that having a mortgage in principle does not guarantee that you would secure a mortgage, but it will give you an idea of what your budget should be when it comes to buying a house and show sellers that you are actually a serious buyer. Because when you go to view a property you're interested in, they will most likely ask you if you have an agreement in principle, which is also a mortgage in principle. And if you say no, the sellers will probably see you as maybe you're unserious. But if you have it at hand, then you can quickly start a conversation around if you want to buy the house, if you want to make an offer. It just positions you as a serious buyer, so you need to have this in place. To be fair, the process of getting a mortgage in principle usually takes a couple of hours to a week. Ours took like a few hours literally. Like when we came to see the house we bought, and when we spoke to the sales team, they just asked us, oh, do you have agreement in principle? We did have one, but the sales team actually informed us that they would like us to get one from their mortgage broker, like the mortgage broker they would recommend to us. And yeah, we did follow their suggestions, and when we got the contact of the mortgage broker they recommended to us, his services was actually for free, so it was a win-win for us anyway. We sent our details over to him, and before the close of work day, he actually sent us our mortgage in principle, which actually tallied with the one we already have. And we chose to go with the mortgage broker the sales team of the development we bought recommended to us, because his services were for free and he was quick to respond, and we just like his vibe. And basically that's why we went with the mortgage broker we went for. And to be fair, it was a pleasure working with him. We didn't have any issues with him. He was quick to respond, he was quick to reply emails, our messages, our calls, quick to pick. And he understood us in the sense that we were experts buying a house on a work visa, and he understood the process of how to go about that. So it was important to us that he knew that, because we're taking out a mortgage to buy a house on a work visa. A lot of lenders here in the UK see us as risky, so they didn't want to lend us. So they were like a handful of banks that would lend us money. And it just so happens that he was experienced with working with foreign nationals who would usually buy a house on a work visa. So to be fair, it was a win-win. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you been through the house buying process here in the UK or anywhere in the world? How long did it take you? Please drop your experiences in the comments below. You just might be helping someone looking to buy a house, maybe anywhere in the world or here in the UK, know how long it might take them, like give them a rough idea of how long it might take them, because this video is just based on our house buying process and some information I just gathered there and there from my research. So having people in the comment section to share how long it took them to buy their house would really help others who are looking to do the same. Now, the third step is finding a property. Now, the time it takes to find a property can vary widely. For some it might take a few weeks, while for others it can take several months or even years. This stage involves viewing as many properties as possible, researching different areas, and deciding on what is important to you when it comes to buying a house or where you want to live. The housing market's current state also plays a significant role when it comes to finding a property. You see, when the market is competitive, it might take longer to find a suitable property. Now, for us, we actually found our home on YouTube. And then we saw it in person, we fell in love with it, and we bought it. So basically, one day I was on the YouTube, like being the YouTuber I am, I love to watch a lot of YouTube videos. And one category of videos I like to watch is home decor, like home tours. I like watching house tours. Like I love watching videos on that. And there's this channel I follow. I think they call themselves Property Vlogs. I'll leave a screenshot of their channel page so that you guys can go check them out. They do amazing tours. They're both husband and wife running the channel, and they're both architects, and I love the way they do their house tour. So one day I was on their YouTube channel watching their amazing videos as always, like I usually do. And then they went to visit the show house of the house we bought, like the type of house we bought. They went to visit the show house, and then they did the house tour. And then I fell in love with the house from watching that video. And then I told my husband, we need to come see this house. Like, I need to see this house. I need to just be in this house. And then we came to development. We saw the show house. Like, the show house was splendid than what I even watched online. Immediately I entered the house, I fell in love, and I knew this was it. As at the time we saw the house, we couldn't even afford the house, to be fair. So one thing I had to do, because my husband was working full-time already, I had to go back to work. I had to say bye-bye to my ever-prolonging maternity leave. And then I had to get a new job. And then I had to go back to work. Once I started work, we could then afford to buy the house. Now, I am digressing, but let me just say this. If you want to know how I transitioned into tech and I secured my first tech job in the UK that gave us the ability to be able to afford the house we bought, I do have a playlist on that. I will link the playlist to this video for those who are interested in watching the video. Likewise, I have a video on the channel detailing the factors to consider when buying a house and critical mistakes to avoid, especially if you're a first-time buyer. I would link these two videos I just talked about to this video for those who are interested in watching it. Like, it will give you insight into what to look out for when you're choosing where to buy your house, or what to look out for in a house in general, especially if you're a first-time buyer. Now, enough of digression. Let's continue with the video. The fourth stage that will determine how long your house buying process will take is making an offer and having it accepted. Now, once you find a property that you like, or the property you want to buy, the next step is to make an offer. Now, when you're making an offer, it is very important to ask questions about the property, and it is very important to negotiate. Negotiations are welcome, like it's a business transaction. As long as it is done respectfully, negotiations are welcome. Again, I do have a video on the channel detailing how to negotiate when buying a house here in the UK. Like when we bought our house, we negotiated and we got a free next thermostat. We got 5% deposit contribution. We got an upgraded kitchen with free appliances like washing machine and dishwasher. We got them for free. So it is very important to negotiate. I would also link the video to this video for those who are interested in watching that. Now, when it comes to negotiation, it can actually take a few days to a couple of weeks depending on the seller's circumstances and the market conditions. If your offer is accepted, you can then move on to the next stage. Now, you also need to know that if the negotiation is drawing out, or if your offer is not accepted, this can delay your house buying process because you have to do a lot of back and forth. Now, when it comes to negotiation, you have to know that negotiating is a give and take situation. It has to benefit you, the buyer, as much as it has to benefit the seller. So that's one thing you should keep in mind. Now, moving on, the fifth stage is actually the mortgage application and approval. So after your offer has been accepted, you will actually need to apply for a mortgage formally if you're buying a house with a mortgage. If you're buying a house with cash, then probably you skip this step. So basically, the mortgage application process involves submitting detailed financial information to the lender, who will then conduct an evaluation of the property to ensure that the property is worth the amount they are lending you. Now in the UK, it typically takes between 2 to 6 weeks to get a mortgage approved after applying. However, the time it can take you personally can vary depending on several factors, including how busy the lender is, the complexity of your financial situation, how promptly you respond to the request for more information when they need more information, and whether the application is considered clean or more complex. So for example, a clean mortgage application might take a few days, but a more complex application might take like 6 to 8 weeks. In some cases, it might be possible to get a mortgage approved in as little as 24 hours, but this is rare. Now, there are also fast-track mortgages. Basically, the fast-track mortgages are generally available to applicants who meet certain requirements, such as having a low loan to income ratio or a low loan to value ratio, a good credit rating, and a solid employment history. Now, for transparency's sake, our mortgage application process took less than a week because we already had all our documents for our mortgage application ready, because I was watching a lot of YouTube videos, reading a whole lot of information like blog posts online. So we already started gathering our documents together. And to be fair, we were very responsive to our mortgage broker. When they ask for an information or extra documents, we send it in immediately. Once again, if you're curious about the mortgage application here in the UK and the documents involved, I do have a video detailing our mortgage process and the documents we use to secure our mortgage. I will link that video to this video for those who be interested in watching it. Now, the sixth stage is legal work and conveyancing. Now, in the UK, the legal process to buy a house is known as conveyancing. It is often the lengthiest part of buying a house here in the UK, because I think that was our lengthiest part. Oh no, completion was our lengthiest part because we had to wait for the developer to finish building our house. Yeah. Now, in the UK, conveyancing for buying a house will typically take 4 to 16 weeks, but the duration can vary depending on factors like conducting searches. Yes, they'll always conduct searches on the property you want to buy and the grounds it sits on, how busy the local authorities are, like the council, how busy they are to provide some information, and some other authorities involved in buying a house here in the UK. Checking the legal titles of the property and preparing the necessary documents for the transfer of ownership. Now, conveyances, like I said, will usually take a couple of weeks, but it can be longer if complications arise, such as issues with the title deeds or delay in the property chain. To be fair, I can't remember how long our legal process took, but I knew it didn't take that long, maybe a couple of weeks, but I knew it didn't really take that long as completion did, because we had to wait 5 months to complete. Now, stage number 7 is property survey. Now, a property survey is often recommended to check for any structural issues or other problems, especially if you're buying a pre-existing house and if you're not buying a newly built house. Now, depending on the type of survey you choose, maybe you choose a basic house buyer report or a full structural survey. It can take up to a week to 2 weeks to get that done. Now, if the survey uncovers significant issues, it might lead to renegotiation of the purchase price of the house, or in some cases, a decision to pull out of the purchase altogether, which could prolong your house buying process, really. Now, we bought a new built house, so we did not have to go through this process before buying the house. But after we bought the house, like when we got the keys to the house, we actually did a survey. So basically, we got a surveyor to come look at the house if there's any structural issues or anything we should be worried about. Basically, it's called snag inspection. I think they call it, yeah, that's what it's called. And it just took like a couple of days because the surveyor came in. It took a whole day to check the house, brought some equipment to check the house and all of that. And I think after 2 to 3 days, we got a report about the house. And to be fair, our house was actually nicely built because there was no structural issues. We only had a few snags there and there. So we did this because it was our first time buying a house in the UK, and we really did not know what to look out for. And you can't be too sure with all of these developers because some of them, they are very funny when it comes to building their houses. So we just wanted to be sure, buying a house is a huge financial commitment, and wanted to be sure that we have a good house. Basically, that's why we did this. So basically, that's why we did a snag inspection. I think that's what they call it here. Not necessarily survey, but they call it snag survey anyway. Moving on. Stage number 8 is exchanging contracts. Now, once all the legal work has been completed, whether you're buying a new build or a pre-existing house, you would have to do legal work. Once that has been done, and once your survey has come back clean, or you sorted any issue that was found in the survey, if you're buying a pre-existing house, both you, the buyer, and then the seller can assign a contract and exchange them via your solicitor. Now, you need to know that at this point where you are exchanging contracts, the purchase has become legally binding, and usually you would have to pay a deposit. Typically, you have to pay 10% of the purchase price at this point. Now, if you back out, if you, the buyer, back out, there will be some legal consequences. You might probably lose your 10%, or you might even lose more money. They might ask you to pay more money. Now, if the seller should back out, you will not lose any money because it wasn't your fault the deal did not go through. It was from the seller's end. But if it was your fault, like the buyer's fault, that the deal does not go through, there will be some legality to it, and you might have to pay some money, or you might have to lose your deposit. But to be fair, I don't know what happens to the seller if they are the one to back out. Maybe because I was the buyer during the house buying process, so that's why I know what will happen to me if I backed out of the deal. But yeah, you have to put this in mind that if you're the buyer, you have to see it through once you exchange contracts, unless there will be some legal consequences. Now, when it comes to exchanging contracts, it should typically take about a week, but it can be delayed if there are issues with the paperwork, or maybe your mortgage has not come through. A whole lot of things can happen that can delay your exchanging of contract process, or maybe your solicitor is on holiday and stuff like that. It can actually delay the process. Typically, within a week or 2 from when you reserve a property, if you're buying a new build house, you should actually exchange contracts. If you're buying a pre-existing house, it can take a couple of weeks because you have to wait for the survey to come back if it's clean. And if you're going to be applying for a mortgage, they have to wait to see how your mortgage application would go. So for us, our mortgage application did not take time. So once our mortgage application came back after a week, we reserved our property. The next week, we were already exchanging contract. Like it was that plain and simple. Like I usually say, the process of buying a new build house can be fast, and I feel it can be rushed at times. So you need to pace yourself. Once you reserve a property, you need to be sure you want to buy that property. But anyway, you have like 2 weeks cooling period to choose whether you want to buy the property or not. But after that 2 weeks, whatever you paid to reserve that property will not be given back to you in most cases. And you can choose not to exchange contract. But basically, after that 2 weeks, you would actually have to exchange contract. Like they'll put pressure on you in some cases. To be fair, Send Money did not pressure us to exchange contract. We actually did pace ourselves because we kept on negotiating and negotiating. And maybe because the house was not ready again, so yeah. So moving on to number 9, which is completion, and it's usually the final step between you and the seller when it comes to buying a house. But it's not the final step for you as the buyer, but it's usually the final step between a buyer and a seller when it comes to house buying process. So basically, at completion, the remaining money will be transferred to the seller and you will receive the keys to your new house. So if you're buying a house with a mortgage, the lender, aka if it's the bank or a building society, ours was from a bank. What the bank did was to send the money we wanted to borrow to our solicitor's bank account. And then our solicitors sent it from their own bank account to St. Modern's bank account. So we didn't get the money in our bank account. No. Even when we withdrew our money from our live ISA to pay for the house deposit, it wasn't sent to our bank account. It was sent to our solicitor's bank account. So our live ISA provider sent the money to our solicitor's bank account, and then the solicitor now sent it to St. Modern. So basically, your solicitor is like your errands guy, or will I say the person that would make all the transactions on your behalf. You just give the authorization and they make the transaction on your behalf. Basically, that's how it will work. And I guess if you're paying cash, you probably just send the remaining money to whoever you're buying the house from. Basically, I think that's how it works because you didn't need the bank or you didn't collect money from the bank. To be fair, I don't know how it works if you're buying cash, but we bought with a mortgage. So basically what happened was the bank that was going to borrow us the money sent the money to our solicitor then sent it to St. Modern. Nothing was sent into our bank account. Now, completing usually occurs between a day or a few months after exchanging contracts, depending on the agreed upon dates. Now, if you're buying a new house, like in our case, it might take a few months for you to complete, especially if the developer still needs to build the house. Like when we bought our house was, I think it was in roofing stage. Like they've not put doors, they've not put windows, they've not done anything on the floor, they've not bought it up. Like it was just empty inside when we bought our house or when we reserved the property. So we had to wait about 5 months for St. Modern, who was the developer, to finish building the house before we could complete. And to be fair, when St. Modern was ready to complete, they literally told us like a week before that they'll be ready to complete on this particular day. And our solicitor was informed and our solicitor already got everything ready. So a day to completion, our solicitor already notified the bank. And on the day of completion, the bank actually transferred money to our solicitor. Solicitor transferred money to St. Modern's. We completed, and on that day, we had to be on the development so that they'll walk us through how our house work and all of that. So basically, that was completion. Now, the last stage after completion depends on you. So after completion, you can move into the house once you get the key. So that's the 10th stage. So that one is flexible. Whenever you want to move into your house, you move into your house. You know, the timing of your mode can be flexible and depends on your personal circumstances and when you have arranged for your belongings to be transferred. I think for us, we waited a week after completion before we moved in because we didn't do the flooring with St. Modern's and flooring was not included in the purchase price. So we had to wait for our independent contractor, like the people we asked to do the flooring, which took about a week. So once they were done flooring the downstairs, we now moved in after a week, but the upstairs was not floored. It was even after Christmas they came to do the flooring of the upstairs. Long story. Anyway, now let me touch on some factors that can prolong the timeline of buying a house here in the UK. Now, the first one is property chain. Now, if you are part of a chain, where your purchase of the new house or the house you want to buy depends on the sale of maybe your current property. This can introduce, even can delay, or if the party you're buying their house from, let's say you're buying a pre-existing house, you're not buying a new build house, they have to wait to move into a new house, or they have to wait for the person they are buying their house from to move before they can move. This can affect the timeline, and to be fair, the property chain can collapse. If possible, avoid property chains because it can easily collapse and it can be a lot of issue. And also, if you, the buyer, and the seller has significant time constraint, this can lead to delay in the house buying process. Secondly, market conditions can lead to a delay, or it can also lead to fast tracking your house buying process. Now, in a hot market, delay can occur due to increased demand for maybe surveys or mortgage approval and conveyancing service. And also in a hot market, because people really want to move, if you're on a property chain, it can make the property chain faster, or it can even fast track your house buying process. So it's just a 50-50 now, I would say. It can actually delay your house buying process, or it can actually fast track your house buying process. The third factor that can impact your house buying process, like the timeline for your house buying process, is complications like legal issues, problem with the survey, or difficulties in securing a mortgage could also extend the process. The fourth is personal circumstances like job changes. It can contribute to delays because lender might want to do more checks and see if your new job meets the criteria to be able to buy the house, or meets the affordability to be able to afford the monthly mortgage repayment. And a whole lot of issues can, arise from you changing jobs. Again, if you're changing jobs to a job that's paying like £1 million per month from a job that's paying like 50k per month, that can actually fast track your mortgage application, because let's say you're buying a house that is worth 200k. Now, bank knows that you can afford this house without even blinking, because you've moved to a better job. But they might want to know how secure it is your new job, and things like that. So yeah. So cycling back to the question that this video is centered around, which is how long does it really take to buy a house here in the UK? Well, on average, it can take around 6 months from start to finish. But there are also things to consider, because some buyers can experience delay due to issues like survey problems, financial hiccups, or even just slow communication between the buyer and the seller, or all the professionals involved. So it is not unusual for some transactions to actually stretch beyond the average 6 months to even a year or more. So you need to keep that in mind as you embark on your house buying journey. Now, by being well prepared, like watching YouTube videos like this one you're watching, or reading blog posts, or talking to people who have gone through the house buying process, and choosing efficient professionals, like choosing efficient solicitors and mortgage broker, and understanding the steps involved in buying a house, can actually make the process of buying a house smoother and possibly faster, because you are well informed, so you can make informed decisions, and you've chosen the right professionals that can help you make the process go more smoother and faster. Watch the video on your screen right now.